Today, we are going to learn the first chapter. The name of the chapter is An Astrologer's Day. It is written by R.K. Narayan. His full name is Rashipuram Krishnaswamy Iyer Narayanaswamy. He is one of the best known novelists among Indian English writers. He has written 14 novels, 5 volumes of short stories, a number of travelogues, and a collection of non-fiction. In 1975, he also wrote his autobiography. The name of his autobiography is My Days. His books like The Bachelor of Arts, The Dark Room, An Astrologer's Day and Other Stories, The Financial Expert, Waiting for the Mahatma, The Guide, and many others were introduced to American readers in 1952 by Michigan State University Press. His novel, The Guide, won him the Sahitya Academy Award in 1961. Humor, unoffending irony, a unique Indianness, simplicity, and elegance are the characteristics of his writing. He has written about common human relationships. His book, Malgudi Days, is a collection of short stories. The book includes 32 stories, all set in an imaginary town of Malgudi. Each of the stories represents life in Malgudi. The first story in Malgudi Days is An Astrologer's Day. Here is the first passage of the story, page number 2. Read this passage at home. In this passage, we find 3 things. The first thing we find in this passage is professional equipments of the astrologer. We find that there are 4 professional equipments of the astrologer. They are: number 1, a dozen cowrie shells. Number 2, a square piece of cloth with obscure mystic charts on it. Number 3, a notebook. And number 4, a bundle of Paimara writing. The second thing we find in this passage is astrologer's appearance. The forehead of astrologer was impressive. There was sacred ash and slightly orange color applied on his forehead. Due to continual searching look for customers, his eyes sparkled with a sharp abnormal gleam. His pointed forehead and dark whiskers considerably increased the power of his eyes. To crown the effect, he wound a saffron colored turban around his head. This is how the astrologer was looking. The third thing we find in this passage is sitting place of the astrologer. The astrologer sat under the branches of a spreading tamarind tree, which was by the side of a path running through the town hall park. It was a remarkable place in many ways. Now see the second passage of the story, page number 3, first half. Read this passage at home. In this passage, we find 2 things. First number, the first thing we find in this passage is that the place where the astrologer used to sit was always crowded from morning till night. There were medicine sellers, sellers of stolen hardware and junk, magicians, an auctioneer of cheap cloth who created loud noise all day to attract the whole town. A vendor of fired groundnut spoke loudly and created noise. He gave his groundnut a fancy name each day. So people gathered to him. A considerable portion of this crowd wasted time just hanging around the astrologer too. The second thing we are told in this passage is that half of the charm of the place was its lighting. The place did not have the benefit of municipal lighting. The place was lit up by the shop lights. There were hissing gas lights, naked flares, old cycle lamps, and some, like the astrologer, managed without lights of their own. It was a confusing crisscross of light rays and moving shadows. Now see the third passage of the story, page number 3, second half. Read this passage at home. In this passage, we are told about knowledge of the astrologer. The astrologer does not know anything about stars or astrology. The townspeople believe his predictions because of his study, practice, and clever guesswork. We are told that if he had not left his village, he would have to toil in the land and drive the cornfield. He left home without telling anyone and travelled a couple of hundred miles. He had a working analysis of mankind's trouble. Long practice had sharpened his understanding. The remaining part of the story we will see in the next video. Thank you.